Hello, welcome back to the Red Path. Today, Dara and I are going to talk about our top 5 units for the World Eaters. Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm joined again by Dara, and we are here to talk about our top 5 units for the World Eaters right now. This was something I'd originally intended to do about every 3 months back when I started the channel, but then a little something happened at the start of 2020, which kind of threw off the meta for everybody, and there was quite a bit of stagnation for about a year. So Dara and I were just talking about my last top 5. Quite an interesting pick, and I'm trying to remember why I did it, but I don't know. Anyway, Dara, how are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, good, man. It is a really interesting one. Like looking back on that old top 5, I think it shows a lot of like sort of player maturity over time. That a lot of the units that you had picked there, and definitely like I would have agreed with it at the time, were sort of like, oh yeah, like, they were good or whatever. But like as time went on, they were just good, and we started to like kind of find those units that really tick kind of over that just good line and stuff. So it's really interesting to see. I think there's a lot of like, it's a good sign of like player development on all of our parts to be able to recognize that maybe some of those units aren't exactly necessarily as good as we had maybe initially suspected that they might be. But yeah, so obviously some of them are the same that we've picked, and then some are different again. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just for any guys watching, we don't know our top 5, so I don't know what Dara's top 5 is. He doesn't know what mine, and we're going to kind of stagger them up.
I feel like there's going to be some crossover.
Oh, there's got to be. I know there's one unit that better be in both of them. And I just want to mention something briefly here. Although this is a top 5, which is traditionally seen as something like a kind of clickbaity, meme sort of video, I think there is value, especially in something that Dara just said there, because back in January, the list I posted, or the top 5 I posted, was so incredibly different to what we've both got. I'm assuming it's different to Dara's anyway. It does show, as you said, mate, player development. We've had some big events happen over the last basically a year. We've seen things change. There's been other codexes come out which indirectly, buff or debuff our units because, certain things become more powerful. So I think there is value in this kind of unit tracking, for a sub-faction focused channel like this. What both of our top 5s, even if we've come up with identical top 5s, I don't think that means that every World Eaters player should go and buy what we've picked, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it's like, this is our top 5. It's like what's working for us, but I'm sure if you were to ask a lot of other people what their top 5s are, it's really going to differ. And I think a lot of the reason why the top 5 unit selection has like evolved so much since the last time is because there's been, so I think it's twofold. Like there's been a lot of discussion over the last, we'll say year basically, where, we've been able to chat to a lot of like-minded players. We've been able to have some really interesting discussions in various forums and groups and here on the channel in the comment section as well. And I think it's like really like kind of changed, definitely for me anyways, changed my viewpoint on a lot of units that I previously would have, been less inclined to bring. And then certain units that I was very favored towards have now kind of like slipped away from me and stuff like that. So it's a mix of that. And I think a bit of like sort of, we've had such a long time of having the same codex and the same books to work from. And obviously that's not great, but having this like really, really long period of time to focus on that book means that we've had so much time to pull the best out of the book that we can. Yeah. So again, like as the reps are coming in, as time is going on and the meta is evolving and changing, we're having to continuously look back at our book and try and find units that maybe we glossed over initially that now fulfill a role that they didn't before. You know, it's even as like secondaries change, as new codexes come out, we're having to look back at our old codex and say, hey, you know that unit that I used to never bring? Maybe now there's a place for it. Or maybe there's a unit that you used to always bring. It was like a staple in your list, and now it either has to change or has to go by the wayside for the time being. So I think it's really interesting from that perspective. And that's kind of why I think the video is very relevant too, because like you can really see, you know, if you were to watch this and then watch the old video, you'd probably see like such a drastic change in our approach to how we're playing the world leaders and stuff. So yeah, from that perspective, I think it's a really fun one to do.
Yeah, definitely. And just to follow on from that, okay, it's a bit of a sidebar. So for anyone who tries to do like a YouTube channel or something, as you're doing your research, you find out there's this thing called a call to action, right? That is the part in your video where you're supposed to tell people to like and subscribe, right? Now, the reason I bring this up is relevant because I'm supposed to mention Patreon and like and subscribe. Fuck all that. Discord. I've really been pushing our Discord in the last few videos. This isn't something that we get any kind of, you know, monetary payback. What we do get is a bunch of really intelligent, knowledgeable folks talking about world eaters, and the core of my top 5 is honestly based on learning stuff and seeing other people's experiences, hearing their battle reports, having people do the math hammer from our Discord. And it's such a valuable resource, I think. Now, you know, if you've got access to a local, you know, gaming group or something like that, certainly use whatever resources you can. But I think if you're a World Eaters player and you're not in our Discord, you're missing out. Like, we've got certainly 2 of the top 5 Chaos Space Marine players in there right now, like in the world. Like Mark and Mike are, you know, I think they're both still in the top 3, actually. I know there was a little bit of a change after Orlando, but, you know, and then there's a lot of us who have put in a lot of thought and stuff into World Eaters. I think we're all learning a lot from each other. So I do think, as my call to action today, in an effort to self-promote the channel, come and join the damn Discord, everyone. I want to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions on World Eaters, basically. But that aside, let's get into it now. Dara, what is your number 5 unit for the World Eaters?
Cool. So my number 5 is the Termite Drill, which probably like isn't hugely surprising to anyone.
Surprise is number 5, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the value you can get from the other 4 units ahead of it is a bit higher. Okay. However, obviously, you know, everyone knows I love the drill, and a lot of people love it as well. You know, I think I've started a little bit of a revolution with it. But yeah, so I guess like there's a couple of key things in every World Leaders army, which is quick engagement, solid combat potential, and safety for delivering your Berserkers into the heart of the fray. And I think the Termite, in terms of safe delivery, is probably you know, one of our best options, and just obviously has like fantastic damage potential. Yeah, like I'm not going to go through it all again here. Like, y'all have heard me ramble about the drill so much.
You did an hour-long video on it. So.
Yeah, like literally. So yeah, like the drill is just, I think it's still really useful. It's still really relevant. I've had a lot of games with it. I love it in all my games. You know, you got so much different things you can do with it. And as a mechanism to deliver your Berserkers, which are the bread and butter of your list, it's a great mechanism for that. Not discounting the Rhino. I still think the Rhino is very relevant in certain builds. But for me, the Termite Drill just really packs the punch. It gives you good survivability, especially against those high damage weapons, because the toughness 8 really, really helps it. And as you'll see in one of my other choices, there's ways of like making it even tougher. But yeah, so that for me is my number 5. So yeah, what's number 5 for you, Jamie?
Raptors. Now, I was hesitant to put them at number 5 because they are such a strong unit. Like, they are incredibly strong in World Eaters, and I'd be, I think I'd be fairly safe to say, of any Legion Raptors could go in, World Eaters would be the best. Whilst other like Night Lords, Emperor's Children can do like some basically guaranteed charges, the reason Raptors are so good is because you don't necessarily want to be getting them into combat. They are action monkeys, and its apoplectic frenzy is the sole reason they are good for us. So I suppose maybe Alpha Legion can benefit from them. But combining that with our play style of wanting to generally push quite far up the table. They're good skirmish troops. They can grab a primary. They're power armor, so they're fairly resilient. I mean, they still need 2 wounds, but for their 75 points for 5 models, that, you know what, they can do some work in combat, you know, especially against low tier infantry, you know, guardsmen, termagants, stuff like that. They'll carve a path, but ultimately they're there to get you a engage in all fronts quadrant. They're there to get you a first turn retrieve Octarius in one of the harder quadrants. And once they've done that, you're pretty okay with them dying, quite frankly. And I think with the point of the game being scoring victory points, units that get you victory points always have a place if they're efficient in doing it. You know what I mean? So they're not in my top 3, obviously, because I think there are other things which are slightly more critical to your list. Because Raptors, are, in my opinion, are only good if you are running a list that generally favors retrieve and engage. If you're not bringing those secondaries or you're not building towards them, you maybe don't need Raptors. But yeah, there's other things, you know, body blocking, move blocking with them that they're super good for. But that's more of an advanced play, I think, for just a generic top 5. I think I'm happy with them in 5th spot and watch them be Dara's number 1.
Actually, they're my number 3.
But you've got to do number 4. So now you spoiled.
I know,
number 3.
but I don't want to like repeat everything you've said. But on the Raptors point, so they're number 3 for me.
Okay.
And I just totally agree with you. Like, as action monkeys, as point scoring units, and it's literally, I think you said it perfectly, where it's like the game is about scoring points now. It's not about killing your opponents. And you need units that will score you those points. You can see that sentiment echoed from all the top players. I'm pretty sure, like on the Orlando GT, that's what like Nick and Paul were saying in the commentary. You need to keep scoring those points, and you need units that can do it, and they do that so well. Yeah. But I also interestingly believe that if you kit them in a certain way, they can be an exceptional damage output unit. Yeah. So one of the things I've been really playing around with these days is a 10 or 15 man squad armed with either 3 melta guns or just the chainswords, and early doors firing them up the board, getting them into combat turn 1, and just like not necessarily obliterating something, but just the knowledge that there are 10 or 15 of these jump pack infantry who can get AP2, so many attacks each, crunching into your lines with all the stratagem support that they could possibly need to do the damage. If anything, it's a psychological play in your opponent, and they have to deal with them immediately. Yeah. So in the meantime, I have that big 10-man squad. I still have 2 5-man squads on my list, you know, just doing the retrieve, as you said, scoring me those engage points. I really love it. And again, this is what we're saying about that discussion. I was put onto this play by Mark and Foltz in Discord, because they were like, hey, you need to try this, you know. And consequently, I dropped the Hellblades from my list, which everyone knows I was a huge fan of, and tried it out. And you know what? I loved it. I was like, this is fantastic. And I think it was Jack Harper who took his Blood Angels to the Orlando GT. I was mentioning that game before. Man, like, I'm considering playing my Raptors the way he played his deck company, as that early doors control to keep the opponent where I want them until I'm in a position where I'm comfortable with them moving out. Yeah. And I really, really think that Raptors can be that. You know, they can just be there being annoying. So yeah, personally for me, massively love the Raptors.
Okay. All right.
And don't forget they have -1 leadership aura.
What?
Yeah, they have like a fearsome pistache or something. Yeah, it's so weird.
Have to be within an inch or something. But
something stupid, yeah.
So what's your number 4 then? We know you're number 3, so...
Yeah, that's it, right? So number 4 is the Leviathan Dreadnought for me.
Okay, nice.
Again, you know, one of the units that I've kind of been championing for a while. I know it's like not necessarily exceptionally popular, but going back to the core fundamentals of what makes a good World Leaders Army, in my opinion. So, you know, I've covered the transport. I've covered the quick engagement. That's the Raptors, like I was saying. You need something to hold that midboard. You need something chunky that can stay there and reliably spit out damage and be scary enough that the opponent doesn't necessarily want to move to you.
Yes.
So for me, the Leviathan fills those niches. It's tough. It's pretty damn cheap for what it does, in my opinion. Depending on its loadout, its damage output can be exceptional. It's a platform for Volkite, which we all know Volkite is really, really useful. Only getting more useful as new armies come out. I think the Gravflux Bombard is exceptional. It's going to only get better, considering that we're looking at Thousand Sons, we're looking at Grey Knights. Soon we're going to be looking at Black Templars. If the rumors are to be believed, we're looking at Custodes coming up as well. These high armor save units fall flat on their face next to Gravis. And it's next to Grav even. So like the Gravflux Bombard just cripples those heavy infantry sort of stylists. I mean, like I've been bringing it a lot against my regular Blood Angels opponent, and man, like it picks up, you know, and that siege drill is brutal as well. So I just really like the Leviathan as a unit that sort of slots very nicely into the niche that the world leaders like to fill. I would say that niche can also be occupied by demon engines, but they require a lot more support. They don't have easy access to -1 to hit, which the Leviathan does for a CP. They kind of need a Lord Discordant around them to provide the buffs. They do tend to die a little bit easier. I just think, as Dreadnought chassis go, the Leviathan's got it.
I agree with you. I do.
So hit me with your number 4.
Okay, so my number 4 is the Dark Disciples. Not the Dark Apostle, but the Dark Disciples.
I knew these were going to be in your top 5.
Well, I was thinking, right, and I'm like, so in truth, the Dark Disciples are my number 1 pick for the entire codex for any legion, no matter what. However, they have a Dark Apostle tax, right? That, unfortunately, I know yourself and a lot of other players really like Dark Apostle because you are players who can remember things. I'm not a player who can remember to roll a dice at the start of every battle round. I'll do it the first time and then I'll forget. So for me, the Dark Apostle tends to be a very mediocre, lackluster character that I keep forgetting to do anything useful with. And then I wish I'd have got that 5-up info. And it costs me more than it wins, right?
I get you. Yep.
But the Dark Disciples, for anyone who's not familiar, if you take a Dark Apostle, you can bring 2 Dark Disciples for 10 points. These are 2 very small infantry models, about the size of a cultist. They kind of have a janky character rule where they can't be targeted whilst they're within, 2 inches or 3 inches, whatever it is, of the Dark Apostle. You're not worried about that. They boost the Dark Apostle to do his prayer on a 2-up. That's great. Their exceptional value lies in the fact that they are infantry, that they can perform actions for you, that they can hold objectives. They're not obsec, but they can still hold an objective, and that they're 1 power level. So you can, if you're strategic reserving something that costs 8 or 9, and you just want to, get the best out of that CP, do you want to know how hard it is to screen out a couple of 25 millimeter bases?
Dude, it's incredibly hard. It's so difficult,
and it's inefficient to do it because we're playing on a rectangular board, but an aura is generally circular or oval for flyer bases and stuff, right? So to get that tiny little corner of the map screened out, you actually have to give up far more than you're gaining, right? And people aren't going to do that because often you're screening with units that are behind a piece of cover, and you're screening out a squad of Marines or Berserkers or a drill. There's always going to be a little gap for some disciples to drop in and score you 4 victory points for Retrieve Octarius and the 3rd or 4th quarter for your engage. Or behind enemy lines, that's another 2 points right there. So for 10 points, the amount of VP you can probably get is pretty ridiculous. And then if you don't deep strike them, they are a super great unit to sit on one of your home primaries, and you couldn't give a shit if they die. That's 10 points of your army. That's nothing. So it's a value proposition for me. It's the amount of stuff you can get from such a small amount of expenditure, regardless of what they actually do for your apostle. I don't care about that. I think they're a superb unit, and I wish we didn't need to pay the tax for them, because if we didn't, I would be bringing 3 squads of them every day. No matter, I would put them in my list before I put Berserkers in my list, 100%.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, no, for sure. I think they're incredibly resourceful. Like, it's literally like you said. I mean, would you pay 10 points to score 5 to 10 points in a game? Of course you would. It's not a question.
Yeah,
for sure. I really like them. They also get butcher's nails and chocolate salt, which is hilarious.
I had them. I had a game, like a meme game on a TTS, and they continually failed me in every turn. And as part of the meme, I basically paid money to bring Khorne back to life so he could kill them. Right?
Nice.
And he failed to kill them.
Of course.
Khorne failed to kill them.
Yeah, but Khorne can't kill anything, so...
They attacked back and put a wound on Khorne.
Yeah, I've had my disciples take down Primaris Marines before.
Yeah, it's silly, but you know what? It is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and do my number 3 as well, since we know yours. My number 3 is Berserkers.
Okay.
I've got them in number 3. We all know what they do. They are certainly going to be, if you're playing World Eaters, you're having Berserkers. There is no reason why you would choose other troops instead of them. You may supplement. I supplement with both CSM and cultists in my troop slots, but there's no point in playing World Eaters if you're not taking Berserkers, because not only are they a great unit no matter what and absolutely iconic, and basically I think why every World Eaters player fell in love with World Eaters. You know, if you're a World Eaters player, you're a fan of World Eaters. You're not just, oh, these are cool. No, we dig them. And Berserkers are that reason. And honestly, it's the fact that they have OBSEC, which just elevates them for me. Because they're good anyway. Butcher's Nails, whatever, stratagems are useful. They're a great unit to sink strats into no matter what, even if you're running 5 with sword and axe, or you're running a blob of 10 with a power fist or lightning claw on the champ. However you've got them set, they're always worth putting a CP or 2 on if the target is right. Obviously that's determined on the game, but I think the OBSEC being able to move as much as they can move, and then just capturing a primary objective, and just even if it's contesting it. If you're contesting it, that's 5, probably 5, maybe 10 VP. Your opponent is not scoring next turn. So for an up to 10 VP swing for 90 to 100 points on a basic squad, I think that's awesome. I think it's incredible. We all know what Berserkers do. So yeah, I'm happy with them in 3rd spot, considering what my next 2 are. But what's your number 2?
Yeah, so interestingly, my number 2 is actually the Dark Apostle.
Okay.
Which, after everything you said, you came out my own heart. Actually, I really love the Dark Apostle. So, like, in terms of HQ units that are actually worth their points in usefulness, we actually don't really have that many. Yeah. We certainly have a lot of HQs that are good, but in terms of HQs that will actively make their points back, either in terms of damage output or in terms of buffs to your own army that help for survivability or whatever, it's not really there. Yeah. I think the Exalted Champion is one unit which, I suppose honorary mention at this point. He's fantastic for, full rerolls to wound. That's so good at exponentially increasing the damage for your Berserkers. Mm-hmm. But for me, the Dark Apostle just comes with such a variety of different buffs that, you can tool to whatever suits your army build. So, for example, the way I run him is with the 5-up invuln. So he shields those 2 termite drills at the start of the game. And it's fantastic because the jankiness of our old codex, he does that regardless of who's going first. So no matter what happens on a 2+, I should have an invuln save on my toughness 8 drills, which, like, if I can mitigate a third of the damage coming in, it might not seem a lot, but when you're taking 1/3 less las cannons or dark lances, man, that matters a lot. That's a lot of damage that could potentially keep those drills alive. So for me, that alone would actually make him worth it for his pretty competitive price point. Yeah. He also is the gateway to giving you the Dark Disciples. So I use them in a similar way to you, where it's like all those fantastic usefulness things. On top of that, at any point when you're casting a spare, you can flip it to Dark Zealotry, so he will give full rerolls in combat. So again, really, really good for amping up those Berserkers, amping up those Leviathans, amping up the drills. He's also so weirdly has a unique relic for the World Eaters in the Banner of Blood.
Yeah.
So the Banner of Blood is like a good depending on your type of list, because obviously on Berserkers it's okay, you give them an extra attack, that's fine. But on a Dreadnought like a Leviathan, or on a Termite Drill, or on a Demon Engine, when an extra attack means so much more because it's such a powerful attack that's actually hitting them, man, like that for me is really, really good, So I generally always bring the Banner of Blood. Now, there is a lot of sort of skill in learning when to deploy it correctly and the positioning around all that, because if you move away from him in the combat phase, you lose that effect. So there's a lot to be said for that. And he's actually not terrible in combat himself. The Accursed Crozius is okay. So yeah, for a lot of reasons, I just find him. And like this again, going back to the discussions that we've been having, I was not hot on the Apostle until Mike P kept pushing him to me, and I was like, "All right, Mike, I'll start using him. It's fine." Since I've started using him, I'm like, "Dude, I don't want any other HQs." To the point that I was almost considering bringing 2 Apostles in my current list.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's my number 2. Would have to be the Dark Apostle.
I mean, I agree. I do. I know I've I don't run one at the moment, and my statement earlier, but that is literally because I forget to do it. I absolutely, the 5-up bubble is awesome, especially in your list, because you tend to run the drills on the table. I know it's not always going to be the case, but that is your kind of list strategy, and it's quite a popular strategy from what we hear in the Discord. A lot of people like doing that, and I understand why. But because I always forget to cast my damn prayers, the Apostle doesn't work for me, and that's a player weakness rather than a unit weakness. So I literally build my list around that. That's why I deep strike my drills, because I always forgot to do the 5-up invul. So I was like, I'll just make them invincible. Screw it,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's it's an important point to. While we can be as objective as possible when we're making these videos, you still have to acknowledge that there is a lot in terms of player strength and player weakness.
Yes.
So the Leviathans and stuff, they really play into my own personal strength in terms of actually playing the game. And like you said, the Apostle, you don't bring him because he's it's a weak point for you.
It's an admin point, yeah.
Exactly. In the same way that I wouldn't bring someone we'll say, how you bring cultists a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I don't bring cultists because I'm not as good at using them as you are. So it's really interesting to have that comparison where it's we can tell you what we think is good. Yeah. But a perfect example is Mark with his Warp Talons. He can say to me so many times, Warp Talons will be able to do this, that, and the other. And I'll be like, dude, I understand that you can use them that way, but I literally am unable to. It's not it's a player weakness for me, I'm not as good at using that specific unit. So it's a really important thing to address for yourself if you're considering, how to build your own list, is look at your own weaknesses, look at your own strengths, and play into those as much as possible.
Yeah. So my number 2 is the drill. I put the drill right up there at number 2.
I respect you for that.
Yeah. Because, dude, it's legitimately changed how my list has functioned. Once I settled on how I needed to run them, because I did some experimentation, a lot of games I was running them on the table, had the Hellblades helping out and stuff. And that was like a community list. It wasn't really a Jamie list, and kind of exactly what we just talked about. But from that, I pulled what I wanted. And the drills always impress me. They always do something. They may not kill anything, right? They will fluff their rolls sometimes. If I have to deploy them separate, so they're not fully benefiting from a reroll or something, because sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Nevertheless, the worst case scenario is that my opponent, once they ask me what the stats are, they're like, okay, I'm screening out my entire backfield. I do not want a monster full of Berserkers coming up in my backfield. And because the rest of my list is built around it, it's kind of like a mini Death Star and then little pockets of board control. they screen, which reduces their ability to come forwards and meet me in the middle, which gives me more opportunity for the middle. Now, of course, some lists won't even care about that if they're running 5 blobs of, gaunts or something like that. But regardless, it always does a job. Even if I screw it up and, the dice don't care today, it doesn't matter. For 190 points, it's 190 with the Volkite, right?
With the Volkite,
yeah. Because that's how I'm running it. 190 points all day, every day. And I keep trying to figure out, do I want to invest in a third one and run 3 drills?
Because, I'm right there with you, to be honest. It's an idea that constantly kind of plays around in my head. I can't remember, it might be Darka in the Discord, but someone does run 3. Yeah, I can't remember who, and they've always had success with it, and I can totally see that being... But I'm the kind of player, again, going back to strengths and weaknesses, where I don't like to have too much of one thing in my list. I generally like to have 2 of things that I like, so 2 Hellblades, 2 Leviathans. I say that, I have 3 Leviathans in my current list, but I more than like the Leviathan. I am in love with the Leviathan.
I just think one of the potential advantages and abuses may be the wrong word, exploits of the drill is the dedicated transport role. It's not bound by the rule of 3. And I just think, for under 1,000 points, you could bring 5 of them. You could also squeeze about 8 or 6
it's like that Anakin meme where you're like, I shouldn't.
Yeah, I know. But I just, if you had 5 drills with Berserkers rolling up the board with the 5 up. No, it's not a broken, but how amazing is that going to look? 5 drills on the board. Just what are you going to do? Is your list turned up to 888, man? Because
for sure, sure.
The amount of wounds at T8 with a 3 up, 5 up, full of Berserkers. So you're kind of scared to blow them up anyway because angry bunnies jump out. I don't know, man. I just think it depending on what our codex brings for us and how it affects our vehicles, the lack of core is interesting. But I don't know. I'm going to try pivoting to not relying on rerolls for it, quite frankly. So just to prepare.
Yeah, I'm kind of already there, right? Because the way I run my drills, the only buff is the invul.
Yeah.
Probably going to lose that, to be fair, but I don't think it would be the end of the world, because if I lose it on the drill, I lose it on the rhino. Regardless of what happens, we still need a transport, for our vehicles and stuff. And if rumors are to be believed, there's a new Warpsmith model coming. New model means probably good new rules.
Yeah.
Who knows what those could be? Maybe he gives the drills a 5+ and vulnerable add-on.
Be all right with that.
But it's an interesting one. It's a fantastic discussion to have. Maybe a topic for another video where we talk about the potential loss of rerolls and auras and all that sort of good stuff.
Yeah.
How that's going to affect units at Iron Core, because I think something like the Leviathan gets massively impacted by that. Whereas, a unit like the Contemptor, which is already good, having that core tag could rocket it into a whole new realm of good. So it'll be really interesting to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so tell us your number 1. Hit us with it.
So the number 1 for me is the Berserkers. What a surprise, it's I'm a World Leader player. But to echo a lot of what you said, they're just so good in that troop role. And the way I see it is like the objective secured is a bonus that they have. But it does very much inform the type of play I make with them. So like in 8th, for me, they were always like they were like the hammer blow, It was like there's like the initial wave of whatever I was running at the time, be it demon engines or dreadnoughts or whatever, that hits the opponent first, and it sort of starts to soften them up and detract from the incoming rhino rush, which then dislodges anywhere between 30 to 40 berserkers, depending on what I was running back in the day. And that was what would carry my list in sort of like a domino kind of cascading effect, where it's like it keeps pushing and pushing. And then some of the time it would just fail, and like a canny opponent would be like, well, I'm just going to shoot the rhinos and deal with the heavy rushers later. 9th fundamentally flipped how I use the berserkers, because no longer are they really that sort of linchpin that my list either triumphs or falls down a round. Now they're sort of like, they're almost like an advanced version of what I use the Raptors for, which is scoring me as many points as I possibly can. So naturally, they're still incredibly efficient in combat. But I launch them into combat to take over objectives now, or to take into a position of the board that I want to be in, or to neutralize, we'll say, a threat that I feel like can't be ignored. They're not really so much the ultimate combat wave that they once were. And that's partly because I run them in smaller squads a lot of the time now. But yeah, for me, it's just, they're really a sort of toolbox unit. They have a lot of stratagems that can affect them. They have all the buffs in the world. Their troops, they have a fantastic stat line, despite the fact that they are 3+ save and 1 wound. Everything else about them is amazing.
Brilliant,
Like high strength, so many attacks, 1 damage, which actually I'm such a huge fan of 1 damage weapons when you can augment them as much as you can with Berserkers. Just because there's basically damage mitigation, -1 to damage is the new minus to hit. It's the minus to hit of 8th edition, of 9th edition. That's like what is hot, so having a wave of damage 1 weapons that just push through all that and don't really care about damage mitigation, that's where it's at for me, So I guess again, we've talked about the Berserkers for hours and hours, and everyone knows they're fantastic. We're all World Eater players here. It's probably what brought us all here in the first place, but I think just where they're standing in 9th, the way they can play the game so well, for me, they are unequivocally, they go into every single list I run. They're always the first thing I put in. I can never fault them. They're, for me, they have to be the number 1.
Yeah, I understand. Respect the choice. I mean, that's how it should be, really.
For sure, dude. So hit me with your number 1.
I feel a bit controversial now. So my number 1 is actually Warp Talons. And despite what your comments earlier, so I have been, I won't say notorious, but certainly quite vocal ever since basically through 9th, once we lost our ability to use the Vigilus specialist attachments, right? Warp Talons started in 8th as, then they took a points drop and they went, great. Then they took a points hike, Then Vigilus dropped and it's like, oh yeah, let's do this shit.
Yep.
Come at me, bro. Then we lost them. Oh, we lost Vigilus, and I was like, all right, shelved them again. Every time, what fast attack should I take? Take Raptors. What about Warp Talons? No, too expensive. But what? No, they're too expensive. Shut up. Listen to me. Right?
Be quiet. There's so many points.
Yeah. And then some discussion started, and then Mark ran them at ACO, Ben Sanderson ran them at ACO, and okay, so they obviously work. Why are they working? Apoplectic Frenzy. Hey, Mark, what's going on? Breaks it down. Squad of 10, 51 attacks on the charge. If you get first turn, it's a 3-inch charge, turn 1, 51 attacks. You can throw Death to the False Emperor on there, or, on 5s if you've got Imperium. You can go up to -3 on your AP if you need, but do you really need it in most situations? Probably not. You've got reroll wounds inherently. You can vets them. They are, again, it's a combination of our stratagems elevating a probably mediocre unit, because they're just Raptors with lightning claws. That's all they are. And they
a 5-up involved.
Well, yeah. They swap out their -1 leadership for a 100% useless warp flame strike, because competitively you are not charging from deep
of course
strike.
not. Never.
You may deep strike for a different reason, but if you are relying on an 8 or 9-inch charge, if you've got violent urgency, you may end up on the mid tables if you're lucky. You will not win games, or you will not win big games if your strategy focuses around an 8 or 9-inch charge.
Not if you're sinking 200+ points into Warp Talons, who, if they fail that charge, will almost guarantee be wiped out.
Yes, because they are still 1 wound, 3 up. And yes, they do have the 5 up, But
it only goes so far.
yeah, at one wound, your opponent is throwing their small arms in there. So that
Yeah, dude, I was about to say, how many times does the fight of up actually come in?
Plasma, if they're running like plasma scions or plasma terminators, the rapid fire may go in there. But that's literally the only situation I can think of outside of some potentially exotic weapons on Xenos armies or something, right? Hotshot volley guns, I guess. But they are, if you get first turn, you're getting your points back, unless your opponent has got a lot of cheap screening units, in which case you're removing the screen turn one, and then you're spending another CP to consolidate and tag in their shooty dreadnoughts or tag in their tanks, and they will die the next turn. And you may not trade up in points, but the amount of destabilization you can cause with them, and if you drop them as one of your last drops, focused across from what you actually want to kill, you will trade up and you will destabilize as well. And if you don't go first, the frenzy allows you to redeploy them behind some ruins. As long as you put them in the right place where they're, directly opposite where you want them to be, but within 9 inches of some good cover or terrain, it's not a CP wasted. Throw them in the first third of the no man's land. They're ready to jump out and kill whatever hits an objective. I think, even though I'm not running them, and I know you mentioned that they were a unit that you like, it's not how you play. 100% valid. I'm not running them because I can't. They don't replace my Leviathan. The only thing I can really take out of my list without completely changing the list is the Leviathan. But I need something that does the job of a Leviathan in my list, i.e. being the thing that everyone wants to kill turn one and will take a horrendous amount of firepower. Warp Talons don't take a horrendous amount of firepower. They take all the bolters and las guns, which are probably not hitting my lines turn one anyway.
Right, yeah, they have no other target,
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, because most of my infantry is in a transport or off the table, so they're plinking wounds. They're not hosing squads other than cultists, which is generally my target for their small arms. So I think Warp Talons are a unit that, unless you're a genius that finds that 3 Vindicators and a Khorne Lord of Skulls is an amazing list, I would generally say start with, your Berserkers, your HQs, then get your Warp Talons in and build the list, not around them, but with that strategy in mind. They are 230 points of your list if you run the full 10. That's over 10% of your list in one unit that generally has one trick and one opportunity to come off. But if it does, against certain armies, I think you can almost win the game, short of some incredible bad luck and bad play on your part. If you could break into their lines turn one with 10 Warp Talons and, wrap around something, the amount of a shitstorm you could cause your opponent would be glorious. So that's, I think, the reason they're number one for me is because I was so wrong about them before and so blinded to them to see that they, as overcosted and in need of 2 wounds as they are, the potential that is in them to swing a game, if they are controlled well, I think genuinely makes them the most highly accelerated unit for me. Maybe not the best unit we've got, so maybe I'm placing them incorrectly, but just the sheer velocity of how good they have suddenly become in my eyes, I'm like, okay. Like I bought 10 of them a couple of months ago because I was like, I'm painting you again, because I had them and then I broke the arms off and made them raptors. So but now I'm like, I want Warp Talons as well, because I'm very suspicious of how they will be in when we get a code.
I think both units are in for interesting changes. But I mean, I can't fault anything you said there. But essentially you're using the Warp Talons the same way I use Raptors. So fair enough. Yeah. I think we did it though, dude. I think that's a very interesting and comprehensive top 5 with a couple of cool different changes between each other.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see, even as much as you and I talk and have know each other quite well now, especially in relation to competitive World Eaters, we can still bring some interesting differences. Like we have different thought patterns, ways of approaching it, and that's honestly I think a strength of the channel, of our community. We're not saying you must run this list. There is no list.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There isn't like the list,
Mhm.
That's why I love it. Like all like the main kind of players who are playing competitively, we all have different lists. I love it so much. But yeah, really interesting. I guess like, in the comments, let us know what your top 5 picks are, everyone. Be cool to see if there's any interesting differences, any units that, we've completely glossed over that we might need to reconsider.
Yeah. See, that's how you do a call to action right there.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good plug. So, yeah.
I apologize, everyone. My camera keeps going out of focus. Just amateur hour over here again. Okay, so yeah, let's wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for watching. Again, like Dara said, let us know your thoughts. Let us know your favorite units. If it's something we missed out, are we forgetting something? Let us know. Do consider joining the Discord. Like I've tried to champion it. It is a great resource that will help you up your game. So many great minds in there. Instagrams and Facebook groups and all the links are down below, all the stuff. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a dislike, whatever. We're all good. But yeah, till next time, stay healthy, stay safe. Kill main bird. All right, let me...
Nice.